Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So today I want to cover my rogue build for module 25. This build is primarily based around boss fights to maximize your single target damage against just one enemy. So we're going to go through multiple different sections, from our powers, rotation, to our gear, artifacts, companions, so on. There'll be timestamps down below where you can skip to any section you're most interested in or just want to check out my build. But first things first, if you just want to copy and paste what I use, well, here's the gear page, here's enchantments, here's the power setup, here's our boons, our companions, our mounts, stable, and current, with the consumables of Flask of Potency, Squash Soup, Wildstorm Elixir, Ratatouille, with our spider totem, which we ideally get to mythic, along with Dragonfire or the Hawk or even Doohickey. And that's my copy and paste build. So now let's go into much more detail and cover each section and why I'm using things, and give a bit of info to help you so you know what you're doing. And along with that, some tips on how you can make your own build and what to focus on and optimize. So we start out with our powers. And this is my general setup, again, for boss fights, for dealing as much single target damage as possible. Your primary at will is Duelist Flurry, and on this build you pretty much only use Duelist Flurry. You're taking advantage of your Band of Air, your Mythalar set, combined with Oppressive Darkness. All of them will trigger a ton of hits with Duelist Flurry, which can hit like 5 times a second. So you get a lot of damage through that, and there's no real need to switch to Gloaming Cut outside of perhaps the last 20 to 10% of the boss's hit points. But still, keeping up the bleeds that you get from Duelist Flurry is really important. You will see that when you're fighting a boss, that on their boss bar just up there, you get these bleeds. This is right here. You can see the green icon. We have 10 bleeds. This means the boss is taking maximum tick damage over time. You want to make sure you keep up those 10 stacks on your enemy to maintain that output and damage. If you successfully do that, it can be upwards of 20% of your overall damage just coming from the bleeds. Gloaming Cut you'll use as like a support every now and again, finishing off an enemy if there's ads in your boss fight, or just doing a few hits every 10 seconds or so to give you that added stealth regeneration. You can of course switch to Cloud of Steel if you're running a fight where you have phases where you can't hit the enemy unless you're far away. That would be to maintain your action point gain. That way you can make sure you get your daily power every artifact call. Artifact calls are really important. We'll discuss those a little bit later. We move to our encounter powers, and again you can see the general setup here. Path of Blades, Wicked Reminder, and Assassinate. You're using Wicked Reminder to put the debuff on the enemy and thus enhance the damage of your other attacks. And Assassinate, it's very important you use this ability from behind your enemy. Now, that can't always be possible. Let's say you're fighting Tiamat, then you're in front of the enemy, and that way you might want to reserve your stealth and use it when stealthed to gain the 25% extra damage. Assassinate can be your second most damaging power, just behind the damage from the bleeds. Wicked Reminder is again that support power primarily, and Path of Blades is very important, and the reason is, again, just like Duelist Flurry, you're using it for the multiple hits that will trigger Oppressive Darkness on every hit, that will trigger your Mythalar set, that will trigger your Band of Hair. So it's very nice damage over time that you don't have to do anything other than cast it at the start. And then you can see it just hits every enemy around you, which is really nice as well. So that'll be your area damage if you are in a boss fight with some ad spawns. However, you might want to use it from stealth for some extra burst damage to get all those hits within 5 seconds rather than spread out over 10 seconds. And we'll discuss that again when we go over artifact calls. Our daily powers using Shocking Execution just because it's our highest single target damaging power. Keep in mind of the extra benefit of when the boss is at 20% hit points or lower, you will instantly refill half of your action points when you use this. So you can basically use 2 daily powers every minute then. So if you're in a phase where the boss is really low, you might be able to use your daily power multiple times. Of course, that will depend on the damage of the group, how much hit points the boss has, and so on and so forth. But if you're running the latest trial, Examiner's Reliquary, you will have about a minute at the end phase, depending on the group you're in, and you will be able to cast at least 2 to 3 daily powers. But moving on to our mechanics, you can see we have this roll ability, which is simply just what you use to get out of a bad spot. If an enemy's going to attack you, you could just dodge and completely negate the damage that you would take, or to get out of a red area, or to position yourself better. Our tab is going in stealth, and the main reason you will use this in a boss fight is to gain the bonus of Cunning Ambusher. You deal 10% more damage for 5 seconds after leaving stealth. You will see that just here, like we use this power, and you can see we gain Cunning Ambusher, and you can see we gain Cunning Ambusher just up there. It's like that purple head icon, and you can get multiple stacks of these if you can get your stealth back quickly enough, and you'll use that with Invisible Infiltrator as we move to class features. Invisible Infiltrator is what you want to use during an artifact call. When you're going to use your daily power, you have this slotted, and otherwise you use Oppressive Darkness, and that's just for the damage over time. Again, stacking with Path of Blades and with Duelist Flurry. Now, if you're quick and can remember, you can right click your Invisible Infiltrator and click it over to Tactics to give yourself the added action point gain. And as soon as you're going to have the next artifact call, make sure to quickly switch it over to Invisible Infiltrator again. And then when you go to use your daily power, you will instantly gain that stealth back, and you can use it again, and you could gain 2 stacks of Cunning Ambusher, and that's why you use that feature. So you can practice switching that. But then we move to our feats, and you can see the setup here. And absolutely, Toxic Blades, you want to use that for the poisoned benefit. It'll deal about like 6% of your overall damage, so pretty useful and better than this assassin's target. Master of Shadows, absolutely just increase the rate at which you gain back that stealth, so you can use it again for your extra damage boost. Skullcracker, single target, absolutely just constant added 10% damage bonus. Unfortunately, it doesn't affect all of your attacks that are outside of these powers, so like your Dragonfire or your Mount power, but everything else it will. And Duelist Expertise is just not as reliable. You generally can't get the bonus for when you really need it. And the fourth set, Back Alley Tactics for the damage bonus. Again, you will use your daily power pretty early in an artifact call before you use like your Mount power and a few of your other encounters, and so you can gain that 10% extra damage boost on those. And lastly, Shadow's Flurry. The reason is because Executioner, you're generally not going to have the boss below that amount, and overall the benefit from Shadow's Flurry can just be a little bit higher. Again, because this will have a chance to trigger throughout the entire fight rather than only gaining a benefit after like the enemy's at 20%, which again, depending on the boss fight, could be for not very long at all. And that's it for our powers. We move to our rotation, and how should you use all this together? Well, in a coordinated group, everybody will be using an artifact that's a debuff that will make it so that the target takes increased damage. And you can use multiple different of those artifacts. For example, here's a whole list. So you could have a trial with 10 people and everybody's using one of these. And then you're gaining like over 100% more damage. You're basically gaining more than double damage against the target during that like 10-second window while these buffs are active. So that is the time when you want to use your daily power, which is a massive magnitude hit, and your Mount power. And you want to combine that with as much burst damage from your encounters as possible. So what you will do to start things off is you want to make sure you have the bleed on your target. This is your 10 stacks of bleed. Then you want to be casting the artifact for the call, and you want to be using a few more duelists. Wait like 5 seconds, use your Dragonfire if you have it, use Path of Blades from stealth, daily, then Wicked Reminder from Stealth, then Assassinate, and then your mount. And you're going to squeeze that all in the 10 seconds. That's your rotation. You can watch it back if you want to. And that gives you the potential for the most burst damage. Again, that Path of Blades during the peak time of the artifact call used from Stealth allows you to gain like 21 hits within 5 seconds, and that's 21 hits of Mythalar. That 21 hits chance to proc the Band of Air multiple times along with Oppressive Darkness. It's just massive. And keep in mind the timing again of when you're using your Stealth. You're using it for the Path of Blades before your daily power, then you're using it just after you've used your daily power for the Wicked Reminder, and then you're using the Assassinate and your mount power. And that stacks all the damage buffs together to give you as much burst damage as possible. And so once your artifact call is over, you can go switch back to tactics here instead of Invisible Infiltrator. Just be sure to remember to switch back to Invisible Infiltrator before the next artifact call, and you just want to have as high uptime as possible of attacking the boss, just using Duelist Flurry all the time. Now, for the extra burst outside of an artifact call, well, it's like Stealth, Path of Blades, Wicked Reminder, and Assassinate. That's about it, as good as you can get. So let's move on. We have our stats. Now, just standing still here when our buffs go away, our stats look like this. Now, this is outside of a party. And in a party, you're going to have a load of stat boosts, especially in a coordinated group in a trial. But ultimately on this build, you're going to have 90% power, you're going to have 90% combat advantage, 90% crit strike, and 90% crit severity. But your primary focus is on your power, your combat advantage, and then your critical severity, critical strike, and accuracy. And there will be a few exceptions where you focus on, let's say, damage and damage buffs instead of stats. And now, how do we get these stats to 90%? Well, using these bonuses. With all these buffs to accuracy, we'll get put to just about 71.79%. Everything else will be on that sweet 90% with, again, those bonuses. A lot to keep in mind when building up a character. So we move on to our gear. What am I using? Well, you can see all of it there. You've got the headpiece from the Dragon Hunts for the crit strike, the armor piece for the accuracy and combat advantage, again from Dragon Hunts. We got the wristlets, those are from Masterworks. Can be pretty expensive. If you don't want to invest in those, which I don't really recommend unless you have a lot of spare AD, you can run the tactful ones for the recharge speed or the mighty van bracers for the damage bonus. Just depends on the content you're running. If you're running content where you take damage over time all of the time, the mighty van bracers can be very useful. As for the weapons, well, we're currently just using the Weaver weapons. Again, they are best in slot in the new trial. Outside of the new trial, very close to that is like the Stormforged, if you can get the good timing on those. But a very reliable set is absolutely the Mastered set. It provides a very nice bonus to your entire team. Especially as a newer player, you will be making more mistakes than others, so you may as well support them a bit more with some buffs. And then your boots will come from Menza Branzit. The Mythalar set very simply comes from your Dragonbone Veil campaign, the last reward, just a few weeks grinding there. And then the Band of Air will come from the dungeon, the advanced dungeon, the Vault of Stars. You will have to unlock that by doing your Sharandar campaign, the first part getting to this point here. And otherwise you'll have to go and do that actually on your hardcore match option. Beat up your mini bosses, get your drops. Overall it'll give you like 5 to 6% of your damage, so it's a decent boost. Rings that give 10% damage, they won't actually give you 10% overall damage, they'll more likely give you 5% overall damage because of the way the damage bonuses work, and the more you have the less effective they all are. But in the second slot here, the left ring, I would run, depending on what content, different damage rings, or just like the Soothsayer's ring for the crit chance whenever you're running other content that doesn't matter so much. But our shirt and pants are just again from Dragon Hunts here, and we just took the set there. You can see what the ones that give you all those stats. So we move to our enchantments, and you can see the setup here. It's like 1 citrine, 3 amethysts, 5 garnets here. Doesn't overly matter on the defensive enchantments. Just use what you have available if you're switching between. But then in utility, it's another Garnet for the Forte. For our overloads, it's a Devil's Precision and a Rage of Flames. Again, you can switch the Rage of Flames out to like a Drow Slayer or a Dragon Slayer or a Demon Slayer, depending on what content you're running, or even some survivability like Resiliency if you need some survivability. Combat Enchantment, absolutely the Lightning Flash. Again, that will come from grinding your Mensa brands in campaign. Bonus enchantment, Recharge Speed. If you're running dungeons such, switch to movement speed so you can move around a bit quicker. For artifacts, you can see we're running like the Demogorgon's Reach, the Dragonbone's Blades, the Mythallar Fragment. Those are like 3 good artifacts here to support your team so you can switch between them. Very nice. Otherwise, there are multiple different ones you can use here as well. And yeah, you could ideally have another artifact like the Wand of Domination giving 1500 versus 1200 of the other one. That is the Rod of Pain that you see in your collections near the end. Just here, 1500. You can get it from the auction house and you can get it from the Zen market. It's just very expensive. Will give you a bit more item level though. So in unscaled content, that item level can give you a bit more of an advantage. Just a very teeny bit more. For this build, we are using the race, the Wood Elf, mainly because it gives us the 5% crit strike. As for the ability scores you want to focus on, strength and dexterity where you can. If you've got too much crit severity, you can put some points in charisma instead. For our companion setup, you can see what we're using. There are multiple options you can use as an active companion. Right now I have like the pseudo dragon summoned, but in a trial, the Cyclops War Drummer can be the best when everybody takes a lot of damage. Even in boss fights like Temple of the Spider, he can be really good as well. I have a companions document where I continually update the data for these single target damage companions, and you can see the list. Like the Blaspheme Assassin is at the top, but she needs a lot of time to actually output that much damage. A lot of fights are burst orientated. The boss will phase, be untargetable, or your companion will die, so on and so forth, and you might be better off with something more reliable. I would generally go with the Greenscale Bowman as the most reliable single target damage companion because he's ranged as well, so he'll die to a lot less mechanics. But right now, the Cyclops is best in slot, at least for Examined, but he has been announced to get nerfed. When? Probably in a few weeks, if not a month. You can see the companion equipment here, again from the North Dark Reaches campaign, just all accuracy and combat advantage. Nice and easy to get these as well. Then for our bonuses, we got Precision here for the crit strike. We got the Bigger They Are, he's from Minsk. We got the Raptor, this is again from the Tamed Velociraptor. Then we got the Neverwinter Knight, then the Batiri, and the Golden Cat. Now, if you don't have the Golden Cat, well, you can run the Alchemist and then switch some things around to get a little bit more combat advantage. Potentially switch the shirt over to the Corroded Dragon shirt. This one here for the combat advantage. But we now move to mounts. You can see in our current tab here, we're running Big Beast Crushing Hand. Overall, it does the most single target damage for the rogue, but just be aware that the animation of it can be a bit annoying. You'll use it and then you might get stunned not being able to do anything. Like you have to wait a little bit before you can cast another power. At least if you're wanting to do at-wills. Some people just do not like that animation, and so will use something else like the Giant Toad or the Golden Touch or even just Tunnel Vision. All of them work. They all have equally as high magnitudes, up to 3000, and so are very good to use. For our equip power, we're using Ferocity. Again, this is another power which stacks on all of your small little hits like Duelist Flurry and Path of Blades, and you'll gain a decent amount of damage from it, but it'll only be about 2%. But you shouldn't have a problem with these ratings, and you can just be better off having Ferocity than instead of, let's say, some more accuracy. In our stable here, we ideally want to have 4 slot mounts. Right now I only have 2 of them, and so I only use these 2. I don't recommend getting like the Balgora if you don't have an excess of those achievement tokens, but yeah, then there's the Ebon Riding Lizard, and we'll be getting a new mount which I'll cover probably later today, or even have covered before this video. That'll be coming in another lockbox. You can see the different insignias you're using, like dominance, some brutality here, and then some more dominance there, and some skill on like 3 of those insignias. The bonuses is 2 warlords to increase our companion's damage by like 10%. Artificer's Persuasion helps to make sure you have your counter powers off cooldown for that artifact call. And then Executioner's Covenant and Mender's Covenant just give us a bunch of offensive stats to help get those ratings nice and high. The collars themselves, the only ones that matters is the encounter power damage and the crit severity. That's it. The rest of them do not matter, like rough AD, stamina gain, and movement speed. Not a big deal at all there. So then for our boons, you can see I generally focus on all the offensive ones here, all of them. Then all of the damage bonus and damage resistance ones against different enemy types. If you're running multiple different content, you want to have these. But if you have a specific loadout for a specific boss fight, then it's not that necessary, and you could have different options. Like Lingering Medicine can pretty nice survivability boost for healing, and especially get Marathon Runner for the movement speed. That's like 12.5%. And then tier 5, we get the Forte and the action points. However, you could switch over to the recharge speed instead of the action points if you can reliably get your daily power every minute and are not struggling for that. A recharge speed will help a little bit again on your cooldowns. The guild boon is just crit strike, like defense, and then you definitely want revive sickness. And so lastly, we have our consumables and belt items. So for my consumables, we're running Flask of Potency, Squash Soup, Wildstorm Elixir, Ratatouille. And then for our belt items, Stone of Health for that clutch, oh shit, need a heal quick button. And then we're running Dragonfire for the damage, it's great. And then the Spider Totem, which we ideally get upgraded, of course. But that is my build. Hopefully this has been somewhat helpful to you guys. This is again for those boss fights where your damage really matters. For AoE content, you can very simply use the exact same build, and you can just switch to like Smoke Bomb and Blade Flurry, and then just use Blade Flurry from stealth, and then like your Path of Blades and Smoke Bomb. But that's about it. Massive thank you again to all these channel members for their continued support. See you guys around. Goodbye for now.